Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Stefan, and today we're going to talk about the connection between geophysics and biophysics, and how the energy systems of the solar system, the sun, and the earth interact with the human bioelectrical system, and how that influences your health and wellness. So in the last video, I have to say thank you so much to all the new viewers and subscribers that came in from those videos. We talked about a grand energetic culmination that's happening as the full moon is passing through the Earth's magnetotail and how that sends energy back to the Earth. This is the moon from this morning. Very, very beautiful. Just one day away from that max full moon. And a lot of you asked, okay, well, how does this interact with the human bioelectric system? I conducted a series of polls. This is the topic that you wanted me to dive into the most, so that's what we're going to do. We are going to talk about how the Schumann resonances, the natural standing waves of light on Earth, how they interact with the brain and the human heart. We're going to look at the Earth's magnetic field overall and how pole reversals and a weakening magnetic field has implications for the evolution of human bioelectricity. We'll be looking at things like earthquakes and thunderstorms and how they create a positive surface charge and how that ionizes the air and has biologic effects. We'll be also looking at the Earth's magnetosphere and moon interactions, and we'll be diving deeper into the human bioelectric system, the electric field of the heart, brain waves, the resonance ability of DNA and how DNA works through electromagnetics, and lastly, what you can do to stay healthy by normalizing your bioelectric system with things like earthing and yoga. So one quick disclaimer is just be aware that what I'm describing here and the evidence that I'm going to show you is still very, very new. This is something that hard science hasn't been taking the deepest look at and not the most thorough examination, though that is changing. There's great research coming out now all the time on this connection between geophysics and biophysics, but it is still a new field. So I want you to be aware of that and that there's much more to what I'm going to describe here than is shown in this video. So this is really introductory guide, really good for forming a base of understanding for those that are new, but I also suggest that you do your own research into this topic, and I will put more links in the video description for you so you can dive into these research studies and various articles that I've written on this. So with that, grab a cup of joe and let's go. Before we jump into our slides, I quickly want to show you the current energetics for around the time when I'm posting this video, because I know a lot of you are going to be watching it as I push it live because of the recent popularity. So here we have the Schumann resonances. This is the vertical electric field from 0 to 40 Hertz as collected in Tomsk, Russia. And you can see some huge energy activations in that frequency range of the light spectrum. So this just started. It's getting close to March 7th. It's already March 7th in Tomsk, Russia, but for everyone else, it's still just at the edge. And here, if we look at our electron flux data, this is the measure of electrons in the Van Allen belts, which is a very, very energetic part of the outer Earth energetic systems. And you can see the electron flux has been elevated above the space weather threshold, the alert threshold. So we do have a strong energy potential right now for the Earth. And we also have, for example, over the past 7 days, strong KP indices. So we've been staying in the 3 to 4 range the entire time. If you look at the magnetometer, it's been unsettled for multiple days now. So just a quick energy update there. We will go over this a little bit more at the end of the video. These are resources for you to check so you can be aware of how you're feeling and how it's interacting with the current energetics of our planet. So these links are in the video description. And these are all examples of common energetic events that interact with the bioelectric system. So increases in the Schumann resonances, strong radiation in the Van Allen belts, those are examples. The ones I have listed here are some of the larger ones. So predominantly would be the magnetic flip of the sun. This occurs every 11 years. It goes and flips its magnetic pole. And during that period where the magnetic pole is the most unstable, and there's actually multiple field lines going out from all directions on the sun, the sun releases more energy overall, and that impacts the Earth and charges the Earth through various mechanisms, and that then has a overall kind of tide raising effect on the energies of the planet and therefore also of your bioelectric energy. So the 11-year cycle of the solar magnetic flip is one to be aware of, especially because we are currently on our way up towards solar maximum for solar cycle 25, and the sun has been getting much more energetic than expected and also faster than expected. So it looks like it's going to be a strong solar cycle. And that means more solar flares and coronal mass ejections. So when the sun is undergoing this magnetic flip, it has a lot of solar storm activity, and this releases high energy particles. This releases photonic energy across a wide spectrum of frequencies, and that then interacts with the magnetosphere of the Earth, compresses the magnetosphere, causes reconnection events which shoot energy back towards Earth. It also creates stronger aurora and telluric currents and ionospheric currents. So the sun has a huge forcing effect on the Earth that cannot be discounted. Here we see an example of a coronal mass ejection from the sun. Here's the orbit of the Earth there. And the reason I'm showing you this is because new data has shown that coronal mass ejections typically have a larger footprint than we previously realized. So the reason that's relevant is you can see here actually the particle density is even wrapping around behind the Earth. So the Earth could be here and the coronal mass ejection could be launched this direction, and even then we'll still be hit with some of that particle density more times than not. You can see it's covering more than 50% here. So this is something to be aware of, and coronal mass ejections and solar storms, solar flares, they can happen at any moment, even during a solar minimum, when the sun's magnetic fields are quite stable and there's very little sunspot activity and everything's nice and calm. You can still have a solar storm that shoots off a CME. So this is something that's not really predictable, but you might feel it when it starts coming in and interacting with the Earth's energetic systems. And this changes things like the electron flux of the radiation belts, compresses them, squeezes them, shoots energy back towards the Earth. The Van Allen belts we'll talk about more in a little bit. One of the big energetic events that happens every 28 days is the transit of the moon through the Earth's magnetotail. Now when the moon is over here and the sun is off to the left, that's a new moon. But when the moon goes over here and it's sun, earth, and moon in that arrangement, then you have a few things happen. First, you have the sun reflecting light off the moon, and that ionizes the atmosphere to some degree during nighttime, which is when the atmosphere typically isn't ionized. So you'll have ionization of the atmosphere on the daytime side. We'll talk more about the ionosphere in a little bit, but you also get it on the nighttime side, and that in and of itself creates a higher electric magnetic potential, which then translates to rising electromagnetic potentials going all the way earthwards and then through the surface of the Earth. And this can even trigger things like earthquakes. So if it can trigger an earthquake, it can also trigger a bioelectric change in you. Also, when the moon moves through the magnetotail, it interacts with the highly energetic plasma that is stored there, and that can also shoot back highly charged ions and other energetic forces back towards Earth, and that can also affect the bioelectric system. So you have the lunar transit, you have the spring tides, which happen every 14 days because you get a spring tide on full moon and also new moon, and that has a stress loading effect on the lithosphere, which does change the Earth's electric current activity in the lithosphere. So it's a minor effect, but it is worth noting because it happens frequently. And you also have things that are completely out of the blue, like gamma ray bursts from the collapse of a star into a black hole or a supernova event, intergalactic plasma waves. We are seeing some really strong gamma bursts. We saw one back on October 9th of 2022 that was the strongest ever recorded, and I was actually able to ionize the Earth's ionosphere, which then induced measurable telluric currents in the surface of the Earth, and that was from 1.9 billion light years away. So these things can be significant. Okay, So here we have the sun. We're going to start zooming in. We're going to go from like the sun and the Earth system down into the Van Allen radiation belts. And then we'll be looking at the Earth, its magnetic field, reversals, and then we'll be zoning in and in and in until we get to like DNA. So we have the sun here. This is a coronal mass ejection shooting off a flare. This also has a solar wind component. This all interacts with the magnetosphere, compresses it, and then this creates an overall energetic environment. When solar wind lessens or there's no flare activity, the magnetosphere expands. But when it compresses the magnetosphere, then that creates a whole bunch of energy movement within the different parts of the magnetosphere, and that then can ripple down earthwards. So you can have a reconnection event, which then transfers magnetic energy into kinetic energy and also thermal energy into these ions, so they can pick up speed and also intensity as they shoot towards the Earth, and the other half will shoot away from the Earth. And you have things like the Van Allen belts, which are picking up radiation, storing it from different places, and if they get compressed, they can all of a sudden shoot their energy towards the Earth. The Van Allen belts are notable in particular because, for example, this electron flux here is measured from the Van Allen belts. These satellites are stationed there, and they are very, very powerful. They can cause deep dielectric charging of a satellite and actually short circuit a satellite. And they are a concern for astronauts that are traveling through them. Like for the moon mission, that was a concern because they're so powerful, they can be lethal without proper shielding. So these are very strong energetic systems that we're talking about, both the plasma, the magnetotail, these radiation belts. ENAs are energetically neutral atoms, and they can pass through because they don't have a charge, but then they can get a charge again and then strike the Earth or then strike the Van Allen belts. So there's a lot of systems here at play. One of the largest things that will upset the bioelectric system are things like solar radiation, changes in solar wind, coronal mass ejections, flares, and the overall larger solar cycle. Now, these are the Van Allen belts here. I really like this graphic because it shows how the radiation in them changes over time. Each one of these loops is 3 days. Here you can actually see a 3-ring structure form, which is rarer. Usually it's just a 2-ring structure. Here's what they kind of look like, cross-section view. But you can see the energy flux is higher. Then it actually drops during this period of time there, weakens, and then dramatically increases again during this period of time. So this is from 2012 to August 2012 to October 2012. So it's a small period of time, but this shows you how these things can change. And the Van Allen belts interact with the ionosphere and therefore with the Earth's surface and the lithosphere and therefore with you. So the Schumann resonances are an intermediate kind of to all of that. So it's important to be looking at these very powerful energetic layers that surround our Earth, and the Van Allen belts are one of those. Now, if we move closer in, we have the Earth's magnetic field. And the Earth's magnetic field, thank God we have one, because without the magnetic field, things would not be looking pretty on our planet. The Earth's magnetic field deflects a lot of high energy radiation and particles away from our planet. There's solar particles and radiation, and then there's also cosmic radiation, which is usually even stronger and a higher frequency. So when you have, for example, X-rays coming from the sun, which of course you don't want to get too many X-rays, the Earth's outer atmosphere, the ionosphere, absorbs those X-rays and turns them into electric currents. The actual ions absorb them into, like electrons will change their energy vibration status, or it'll be absorbed into a molecular structure. And that then mitigates the X-ray from hitting you and causing radiation to some cell or atomic feature on your body. But without the Earth's magnetic field, we'd be receiving much more radiation. And we've had a decrease in the Earth's magnetic field. So when things like an excursion or a reversal happen, which we may be undergoing right now, the Earth's magnetic field weakens, and it happens over a long period of time. So what you can expect and theorize is that during these types of events where you have a magnetic excursion or reversal, you're going to see greater bioelectric influence from the Earth and the Sun and the solar system and galaxy overall, and that then is going to have a evolutionary input, and it's going to be a stressor to the bioelectric system. If you can overcome that stressor, then your bioelectric system will be stronger than it otherwise would be, but you might not overcome the stressor. So here we have a representation of the electromagnetic dynamo of the Earth going through a pole reversal. This is important because I want to show you the magnetic field intensity. This is just a general kind of graphic that I plotted. This is indicative of what they've measured through different reversals. So this is kind of just how I was able to draw after reading a few studies and looking at what it looked like. But you see here that you have clean field lines, though inside it's a little bit more complicated. But then during peak reversal, just like with the sun, you get magnetic field poles popping out everywhere. And the magnetic field intensity drops at that moment in time because the magnetic pole, the dipole, is not 100% of the strength of the Earth's magnetic field. The dipole counts for like 90% of the Earth's magnetic field. So you have the outer core and the inner core, and they both seem to have their own magnetic field characteristics. So when the outer core, this is what was theorized, when the outer core is transitioning, the dipole is shifting, then the weaker magnetic fields that exist through other mechanisms, through the mantle, the inner core, etc., they still exist, but they don't offer the same amount of protection. So there's still a magnetic field, but the strength of it goes down quite a bit. And then it corrects itself and everything's good again, and just, north and south have swapped geomagnetically. Now, this looks like, this is our recent history right here. So this is kind of what we're going through. This is the past 6,000 or 8,000 years of magnetic field intensity there. So you can see we're kind of near a low, though we're at similar levels 2,000 or 4,000 years ago, all the way to 8,000 years ago. This is based on archaeointensity data, archaeogeomagnetic data from like pots and everything. So very, very cool how they bring this together. This is all an aggregate of the Balkan region of the world. So this is just one specific point in space-time on the planet over the course of 8,000 years. But it also matches up with this Italy data pretty well. The red there shows the relative scaling. And you can see that the magnetic field used to be stronger, even just 1,000, 2,000 years ago, having an average strength in these regions of about 60,000 nanotesla, even reaching 80,000 according to our best fit models. And then it's been on a decrease since then. So there's been more bioelectric stress on the human body over the past 1,000 years or so. And that has evolutionary implications. Here's our magnetic field in 2014. You can see the South Atlantic anomaly there. This is believed to have persisted for many, many, many millions of years, like 130 million years or so. And you can see the changes to the Earth's magnetic field from January to June 2014 here. Some of these changes are quite large. We have a 100 nanotesla increase, and then we have a 80 to 100 nanotesla drop over North America during that 6 months. So the magnetic field is always changing, but the rate of acceleration for the decrease in the magnetic field has picked up dramatically just over the past 20 years. So it is something to be aware of. That's why I'm talking about it. We might be going through an excursion or a reversal, but there's just simply not enough data yet to confirm or deny that, because we could just be going back at any moment. There's a lot that we don't know about this, but this is something to be aware of because it means that you're going to be experiencing more bioelectric stress if this continues over time. So if charged particles are able to make it past the magnetosphere and they're not rerouted around the planet, then they'll hit the ionosphere, which is the outer layer of the atmosphere, and they ionize the atmosphere and they change the electromagnetic field potentials of this part of the Earth. So you can see here on the left, this is our recent ionospheric data. You can see the ionisation created from the movement of the sun there. So these are higher frequencies. The sun raises the frequencies of the ionosphere as it moves over. And then you can see the lower frequencies that are hanging out near the pole. So this is a regular diurnal rhythm. On the right here, we have the percent difference compared to the 30-day median. So this shows where there are strong ionospheric disturbances that are not normal. So there are times where it's fairly quiet, and then there's times like the beginning of this video here where we had a solar storm. You can see it's going crazy from the 27th and 28th of February. Everything's way different than the median because during that solar flare, the ionosphere was energized quite a bit differently than the 30-day median value. So this is important because as these electric currents move over and through the ionosphere, they induce electromagnetic field potentials in the surface of the Earth. And this forms telluric currents. These aren't the strongest electromagnetic potentials, but they are relevant because they do inform the bioelectric system and keep it in phase with the natural energy systems of the Earth. And this governs things like the circadian rhythm. So there's a lot of different signals that help the body stay in phase and keep its hormone system pumping hormones at the right time. This is cortisol, this is melatonin, a whole bunch of others. Thyroid hormones, your blood pressure, heart rate. So things like temperature inform your circadian rhythm. Of course, that is infrared radiation. And then visible light informs your circadian rhythm. That is a little bit higher in frequency. But you also have things like lower frequency waves, the Schumann resonances, that also influence your circadian rhythm. And ionospheric currents like these are one of those wake-up signals. So when these deviate from normal, you might find yourself feeling different than normal because maybe you didn't get the same cortisol spike that you normally do. Maybe your heart rate is elevated over normal because of the out-of-phase relationship that's developed between you and the Earth, because a sudden change will do that. Now, let's talk about the Schumann resonances. These are one of the primary things that people look at when discussing the interaction between the human bioelectric system, health and wellness, consciousness, all those great things, and the energy systems of the Earth. Now, the Schumann resonances are standing waves of light that are resonant with the Earth because they have harmonic wavelengths to the Earth's circumference. And these frequencies are 7.8 Hertz for the foundational mode, 14 Hertz for mode 2, 20 Hertz for mode 3, 25, 33, 39, 45. There's higher modes too, but they're harder to see, they're weaker in power, and they're observable at picotesla levels. And you measure them in the atmosphere, you measure them in the ionosphere. They've even been measured leaking beyond the ionosphere. You can measure them very strongly in the Earth's surface, in the lithosphere, in the crust, doing something like a magnetotelluric survey. So these things are everywhere. They're the the energy frequencies that you can find all the time, basically everywhere on the planet. And we evolved in these energy fields. So it's no surprise that the electrical activity of the human brain, the brain waves that pulse across with our waking and sleeping moments, they have the same frequencies and the same picotesla strengths as the Schumann resonances. And that fundamentally allows for an information transfer between this geophysical field and this human electric field that we make. So here we see a graphic where they looked at the spectral density for different frequencies for high responders and low responders for the Schumann resonance affinity test. And they show that those with a high affinity to kind of connect to the Schumann resonances, they had strong observable peaks for mode 1, 2, and 3 across the different regions of the brain. And you can see the lower caudal region there really shows mode 3 well, whereas the middle region shows mode 2 very well, and they're all different. And you don't really get the same energetic peaks for the low affinity responders there. So these are the Schumann resonances. This is mode 1, mode 2, mode 3. You can see how they change over time. This is our time axis. Mode 1's the strongest. Mode 2 has been strong recently, though that's not always the case. Here you can see mode 3 show up more. Mode 4 at 25 Hertz, even mode 5 around there. Mode 6 is like right there at the bottom, very quiet. and you can see some recent activity. Now, just want to make sure. Okay, now there are multiple bioelectromagnetic fields. So you have the Schumann resonances overlapping with human brain waves, and they are potentially a global consciousness that we can all tap into that stores energy and information to them. But there's other aspects of bioelectromagnetism. First off, you have your body potentials. When you connect to the earth, when you put your feet on the ground, without any sort of insulating factor between them, you take on the earth's surface voltage because the human body is fairly conductive. So normally this 100 volt field line would stretch across and you would get that 100 volt charge, so it's very, very minor. The atmosphere isn't a great conductor, so it doesn't really touch you all that much. But when you are grounded, that 0 volt potential rises around you, and then these field lines bend around you. Now, the human body generally will have a positive field for the brain, the heart, and the hips, and then you have a negative potential at your appendages like your hands and your feet. And there is a larger human biofield that emits from the body. It's measurable depending on the quality of your magnetometer up to 6 feet away. And really this radiates out into space into infinity at the speed of light. It's just a limitation of our current technology to be able to measure these signals beyond a distance of about 6 to 10 feet or 2 to 3 meters. So there is a human biofield. I've measured my own magnetic field for my heart, and it's really cool. You can see the magnetic field increase with your heartbeat. Very, very fascinating. This is because the heart generates an electromagnetic field that's much stronger than that of the brain. It is something around the order of like 10,000 times stronger because it's about like 100 nanotesla or so, and brain waves are in the 1 to 10 range. So there are strong electromagnetic fields that the heart generates with every single pulse, and this then basically connects the entire body together at once because that field, of course, travels at the speed of light. So that is a harmonizing rhythm for the entire body. And then you also have things like the pulse wave from the heart traveling up through the neck to the brain, and that helps brainwave activity be normalized and have regular coherency to it. So what that means is all the brain waves are in sync and in time with each other. So the heart is the body's big bioelectric engine. It actually conveys emotional information out into the environment. That's why you can feel the mood of other people sometimes without even touching them, or you can have your back turned to them and feel how they are if you're very sensitive to this. And it's very, very, there's a lot of stuff that's still being learned about this, but we're learning that there's a lot more information transfer occurring throughout the body due to bioelectromagnetic fields than we previously realized. For example, cellular voltage gradients and the field of morphogenetics is showing that what the voltage gradient that a cell or a cell group experiences informs the cell as to its functions and actually even to what type of cell it should be. So they've done work with embryos, like amphibian embryos, and they'll change the voltage gradient to be that they measured across, let's say, the brain, and they'll put that voltage gradient across the tail, and all of a sudden neural tissue for the brain will start to develop in the tail. And then they can reapply the tail voltage gradient, and those cells will then switch back to being normal, kind of cartilage tail cells. So there is a lot of fascinating research being done into bioelectricity, into morphogenetics. I'll put that paper in the video description. And the general idea, the general thought of why that works that way is because the electromagnetic field contains information that cells use to instruct their behavior. Specifically, electromagnetic fields resonate with DNA. And it's most likely that DNA, being such a long molecule, I mean, it's stretched out like to infinity nearly, because it's all wrapped up around itself. It's basically a very big antenna, and it has extremely long length. It's like 2 meters in length. Like a single nucleus has like 2 meters of DNA. And this allows it to resonate with small to long wavelengths of light. So depending on how DNA is resonating, those spots that are resonating the most are the ones that then get transcribed, and then that informs what type of proteins need to be produced and molecules need to be produced and all these types of things. And that informs the cell as to its functions. Is it a liver cell or is it a brain cell? That's determined by cellular voltage gradients to a large degree. So there's some really fascinating research that's being done into bioelectricity. This is still a new field, but what we do know so far is like mind-blowing. Now, there's more to this story. For example, water has electromagnetic properties, a bunch of electromagnetic properties. And water, of course, is the main molecule that makes up the human body, or mostly water. And one thing that it does is when it's near a hydrophilic material, this is something that water is attracted to, it forms an exclusion zone. And it forms what's called EZ water. You might know about this. And this is important because in this EZ zone, this repels things out of it. So it repels molecules and, let's say, viruses and bacteria, and it forms this natural charge separation. So we see this with the ionosphere being positively charged and the ground surface of the Earth being negatively charged. We see this across the magnetosphere. We see this with the human body right here, effectively going all the way from the universe down. We have a separation of positive charge and negative charge. And of course you have the atom and the nucleus being positive charge and electrons being negative charge. So this is a key fundamental aspect of electromagnetism and bioelectricity, is maintaining clear divides of charge. And water will do this under good circumstances, under normal circumstances. But when electromagnetic field potentials are changing rapidly, or they're just not in an ideal situation, then that can disrupt the normal functioning of things like water, of your nervous system, of your brain waves, of your heart. And that therefore is a stress to the system that can cause chain metabolic reactions, which aren't good for you, like free radical chain reactions. And that all is fundamentally something that you can overcome. Most people do. Usually the stressor isn't too great, but these types of energetic events can be very, very dangerous depending on where you are individually and how strong it is. So water is a big part of this, because if you have good water in your system, like you're drinking enough water and your bioelectric system is healthy and it's normalized and it's decharged to the Earth, then you'll form these nice discretionary zones. But if this breaks down, let's imagine that this is the gut, this is the gut barrier right here. This breaks down, then you can imagine a pathogen slipping through the gut and into the bloodstream. And you actually see this concept here, even with like red blood cells. They have a negative surface charge, and the strength of their negative surface charge determines their zeta potential, and that determines how well they don't coagulate against each other and their clotting ability. So if you have blood and red blood cells that are clumping together, that makes pumping blood harder. That reduces the efficiency of the heart and nutrient distribution to the body. So you want things like a high zeta potential for your blood cells. And if you have a out of phase and unoptimal bioelectric system, then your red blood cell zeta potentials will go down, and that's not good. So there's lots of ways that you can improve that. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. Now, there are also biophysical effects from things like earthquakes and storms. So it's not just solar flares or increases in the Schumann resonances. It's also more terrestrial phenomenon like this. When you have an earthquake, one of the things that an earthquake does is it creates telluric currents. And also telluric currents are one of the things that start and trip and activate an earthquake. And these currents, as they spread out through the surface of the Earth, they build these charge differentials. So you get positive charge that accumulates at the surface, and then you get electric negative charge going down deeper into the Earth, where there are a whole bunch of free electrons. And this can create enhance electric fields at higher topographic points, and just in general, this can generate ELF waves like the Schumann resonances. Those are a known precursor signal. This can actually even ionize the atmosphere. That's also another pre-earthquake signal. I have a video on pre-earthquake signals, a deep dive that you can watch. I suggest you do if you're interested in this. And it can produce very odd phenomenon like earthquake lights, where all of a sudden you get this big release of photons and ions out of the lithosphere moving up into the atmosphere and ionosphere. And that's why you can have like the ionosphere get ionized in the first place. It can be through mechanisms like that, or it can be through extremely low frequency radiation like Schumann waves. So earthquakes can create this positive charge at the surface, and that ionizes the air at the surface of the Earth quite significantly. So now the air is loaded with positive ions, and this changes the overall electromagnetic field characteristics of your exact environment. Like if you're in this area or nearby, then you're going to be experiencing that change. Now, an earthquake doesn't happen all that often, unless you're unlucky, but thunderstorms and rainstorms are quite common. And what you see during a strong rainstorm, or even more common during a thunderstorm, is you see these charge differentials build up. You see positive charge rise up to the surface. The storm cloud has a pretty complex charge structure, but at the base it has a negative charge, and then it shoots out these lightning bolts filled with electrons, which also generate electromagnetic energy going from Schumann waves all the way up to gamma rays, and these go down and then they equalize the system. So there's equalization that occurs. Effectively, it's like a short circuit, but this isn't necessarily bad unless you're being struck by the lightning bolt, right? So this, though, can produce very strong Schumann waves, which have bioelectric implications, also just general health and wellness implications, because there's some evidence that ELF waves can, like the 7.8 hertz Schumann wave, can help viruses to replicate. So you have to be aware of things like that. So when all these things are culminating and you're getting changing electromagnetic potentials in your environment, that's then going to influence your cellular electromagnetic potentials. So this is right here just an example of how you have a cell membrane, and then you have the extracellular fluid, and then the inside the cell is negative, outside is positive, and you can measure actually that differential in charge. And so yes, the body is bioelectric in many different ways, and it often depends on whether you're interacting with anions, cations, or if it's a neutral atom, then it's not interacting with you bioelectrically, at least in a very, very direct way. So if you're feeling ungrounded, what can you do? This could be manifesting as, let's say, fatigue, or maybe your thoughts are scattered, or you just can't seem to find any calm. You could also be feeling really supercharged, hyperactive, maybe feeling super creative. There's a lot of things that can happen when the energetic systems of the Earth are in flux, and some people seem to handle it better than others. This obviously depends on your current individual circumstances at that moment in time. But if you're feeling ungrounded, then there's two things that are super useful I found, and those are yoga and earthing. Now, yoga moves your body through various postures, activates your musculature, your connective tissues, which are very conductive, and it reroutes energy throughout the body as a result. And when you pair yoga movements with deep rhythmic breathing, this will stabilize your heart rhythms. It'll create beneficial, coherent, synchronous brainwave activity across the brain, which optimizes your neurochemistry, your hormone production, serotonin, dopamine. This improves your mood and your emotional regulation, and overall, it increases parasympathetic activity and normalizes the autonomic nervous system. So you're not so high and then so low. You're kind of always cruising in a good, feel-good way. So yoga is great. It's great to do yoga before meditation because it makes it easier. You're a little tired, so you just slip into that nice meditative state easily. And a really good way to do it is you do yoga outside and then you just go straight to earthing. because earthing equalizes your electromagnetic potential to the Earth's, which reduces errant electromagnetic activity throughout the body, and that normalizes your bioelectricity to be in phase with the natural Earth rhythms. So earthing is one of the most powerful things you can do to improve your health and wellness overall. I'm confident saying that. And also to normalize the activity of your bioelectric system to make sure that you're feeling good mentally, like your thoughts, your moods, your emotions, going down to how your cells are functioning. We don't want them dying off early because there's so much free radical activity, oxidizing them, breaking apart their cell membranes. And then you go down to how is your DNA being activated. So there's a lot of layers to this onion that I've done my best to peel back for you, but we are still learning a lot about this. Other things you can do include fasting, making sure you eat a healthy diet, unprocessed foods. You don't want things like pesticides, lower your sugar intake, just simply resting, do some breath work, meditation, heat and cold therapy is excellent. If you are struggling to find a way to ground yourself, then a cold shower is one of the best things you can do, I find. I also really think and have a personal experience that drinking tea from herbs like chamomile or dandelion, damiana, lemongrass, they are very, very good at helping you to kind of ground in and normalize your nervous system activity because they modulate your autonomic nervous system amongst a bunch of other things like your brain waves and your heart rhythms. Kava is very, very good. It's very relaxing. Most people are too sympathetic in nature through their lifestyle. So kava increases parasympathetic activity. It's an anti-anxiolytic, so it helps you with anxiety. Sound therapy is great. Yoga nidra is wonderful. Stretching, brainwave entrainment using like isochronic tones or binaural beats. Gardening is a godsend. And remember, reducing your electronic usage is one of the best things you can do. Because most people are on their electronics too much. So if you're feeling yourself ungrounded, then what I recommend that you do is you go to some of these different websites that track the different energetic properties of the Earth, like the Schumann resonances, and see where they are. I have a bunch of videos explaining how to understand and interpret this data. You'll have to do some research yourself too, because I'm still building out this catalog of information for you. But overall, there are some really good resources in my video description you can click. But I recommend that you look at these things and correlate them with how you're feeling. If you're really experiencing some anomalous bioelectric health symptoms, for example, irregular heartbeats, or you're just too wired or just overly chronically fatigued, you can look at things like the Schumann resonances. You can look at things like the Earth's magnetic field, the KP index. You can look at the ionospheric map and see if it's had anomalous activity over your area recently. So links to all these in the video description. And with that, one thing that the bioelectric system governs and has a very large controlling role in is the gastrointestinal system. And gut health is one of the foundations of overall health and wellness. So if you are experiencing bioelectric sensitivity or fluctuations, then you may also be experiencing gut health issues. So if you want help with that, I wrote a book, The Holistic Gut Health Guide, based on 10 years of personal experience remediating my gut health problems, research into the field, the microbiome, a lot of things I've discovered and put into this book that you might not find elsewhere. Chapter on fasting, a whole bunch of goodies in the Holistic Gut Health Guide. So I recommend that you give that a purchase if you are dealing with any gut health issues. So if you like more help, I recommend that you watch my video on earthing up top there. And you also might find my video below interesting as well. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you found it useful, and I'll see you all in the next video. Have a great day. Ciao.